All right, everybody, this is the defunking Wiggers diagram, little class. Okay. So I remember seeing this diagram when I was in anesthesia school, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, you want me to know all of this stuff and this, right? So I am going to calm your nervous system. We are going to defunctify the Wiggers diagram. And what I'm always going to bring you back to, what I always say in my coaching program, what I say to anybody if I'm coaching them through the NCE, whatever it is, what do you know? If you can always take yourself to what you do know, you will be amazed at how many things you're going to actually be able to troubleshoot. So instead of going from like this rabbit hole of I'm dumb, this is too much, I don't know anything, I shouldn't even be here, all this stuff, right? If you can cut that and just say, okay, this is a new concept, this is like a new layer of stuff, but what do I know? Okay. So what I want you to have ready for this is if you can go on the internet and print off, I will also post where this is at, like a Wiggers diagram image. I would have that like printed off or have it on your tablet so you can like take notes on it. I would also say to have a big piece of paper. And I'm obviously had to like break this up in different pieces of paper, but I want you to almost go along with this with me. It'll help it stick in your head when we're drawing out the diagram and what that, but I'm going to make this so simple. You're going to be like, you're like, oh my God, this is really not as scary as I thought it would be. But I do want you to actively participate because I think it'll help. So try to get everything that I have on multiple pages all on one page so that you can come back to it and you can kind of see everything together and make everything make sense. Okay. And I also just want to say too, like, this is the kind of stuff that I do in my coaching program. We do monthly live masterminds where you guys can bring whatever topics you're struggling with. I share my notes. We do some teaching. You can connect with other people across the country that are in anesthesia school. But basically my goal is to get the big concept overview, the foundational info, because once you have that down, you can build anything up on top of it. Okay. And guys, I was a trauma nurse. Okay. I was not a CVICU nurse, and I figured this out. So you can too, because I was definitely all about the trauma, the lines, the epi, and kind of like I was just trying to get any cardiac output. Okay. All right. Let's dive into this. When the spirit of what we do know, we have the cardiac cycle. And all the heart is doing is pressure and volume changes, right? It's pushing blood around the body, and it has to do with pressure. It has to do with volume. So what do we know? The cardiac cycle, there's two cycles. We have diastole and we have systole. So essentially, what is diastole, right? It's you're perfusing the heart. So it's like perfusion of the heart. And you are also filling the ventricles, right? Filling the ventricle. Okay, so that's diastole. Second part of the cardiac cycle is going to be systole, right? So that is essentially our ventricular contraction or like ejection. So now the heart is squeezing, and we are now going to perfuse the organs. Okay, that's cardiac cycle. We do know that, right? That's what we do know. Okay, second part, tracing a drop of blood through the heart. So once again, what do we know? We know how blood moves through the heart, right? So you have your SVC and your IVC, and then where does it go? It goes to the right atrium, right? From there, it goes through the tricuspid valve to the left atrium, or I'm sorry, oh my God, the right ventricle. This is why I have a cheat sheet, because I get to talking. The right ventricle, okay. Then that goes through the pulmonic valve, right? Pulmonary artery, deoxygenated here, right? I'm gonna go to the lungs to get oxygenated. Pulmonary veins now have the oxygenated blood. It's opposite from what we're used to, right? And then that's going to go to the left atrium, the mitral valve, right? To the LV, the left ventricle. Then blood's going to go through the aortic valve, out of the aorta, into the body. And a lot of what we're going to be focusing on is going to be right here. Okay. Or a lot of this that we're going to be focusing on is that left atrium out through the aorta. All right. Okay. So what do we know? So when we look at Wiggers diagram, you have pressure on the top, and you have volume at the bottom. Okay. We're going to focus solely right here just on the pressure. And I want you to have this because you're going to be able to refer back to this. And we're going to look at this beautiful little pressure volume loop here. And it's not going to be scary anymore, I promise. Okay. So let's look as far as pressure, what is happening. So when your mitral valve opens and you have your flow of how everything's going, we're going to focus on where the left atrium mitral valve to the aorta. We're going to focus on that piece of the flow. Okay. So when your mitral valve opens, your left atrial pressure is greater than your LV pressure. Okay. And then when your mitral valve closes, the LV pressure is greater than your left atrial pressure, right? Because think about how the flow is going. Okay. Now with your AV valve, so when the aortic valve is going to open, right? The left ventricle pressure, because that's holding the blood, is going to be greater than your aortic pressure as the AV valve opens, okay? Because it's gonna like LV pressure up, right? So it's gonna be greater than the aortic pressure. And then once that AV valve closes, your aortic pressure is greater than your LV pressure, okay? So remember that, have that tucked away, okay? Now we're gonna have some fun with this pressure volume loop, okay? So pressure volume loop, let's just break it down. I just remember this, P comes before V. So you draw this out with me. So draw your line, your pressure is gonna be over here, and then your volume is gonna be down here. So pressure is in millimeter of mercuries, volume is gonna be in mils, okay? So from here, so I'm just making sure I say this all right. So from here to here, let me do this like in a different color. So from this corner to this right here is going to be systole, okay? And then this portion here is going to be diastole. Just keep that in mind, okay? Because those are the two cycles, okay? So from that corner to that is going to be your systole. And then from here to there is going to be your diastole. So let's fill this in and let's break this down here. So we're going to start over here at the corner. So right here at the 50 hashtag mark here, this is going to be your mitral valve is going to open here. Okay, so our mitral valve is opening. Left atrial pressure is greater than left ventricular pressure at this part. And this is where we're going to have filling. So this is the filling, okay? And there's two parts of diastolic filling. So we're in diastole at this point, okay? You have your rapid ventricular filling as that mitral valve opens, that blood is dumping in there. And then you have diastasis, which is like decreased ventricle filling. So it's kind of at the end. And this is also where you have your atrial kick. So patients that have AFib, they lose 20% at least of that kind of cardiac output because they don't have that atrial kick that kind of kicks that last little bit into the LV to go out. Okay. So this, in other words, right here is going to be your end systolic volume because we're starting diastole. So at the end of systole here, this is going to be your end systolic volume. Mitral valve's opening, we're filling here. Mitral valve is going to close here. Now it's closed, okay? And this is going to be your end diastolic volume. Okay. And like we said before, when the mitral valve closes, your LV pressure is actually greater than your left atrial pressure. Okay. And then now systole is going to begin. So now we're going to go up here. What do you think is happening here? AV is going to open now. Okay. So your aortic valve is opening. What's happening with our pressure? LV pressure is greater than aortic pressure at this point. And this is where we get that ejection, right? So now it's opening. This is going to be the ejection portion of that blood going out. You can also say, and then here is going to be your isovolumetric contraction. Okay, so this is going to be your isovolumetric contraction. This is going to be, we're contracting, AV valves open. Now we're ejecting out. Okay, and then over here is when your AV valve is going to close. So now it's closed. Now we have the isovolumetric relaxation as we go down, and then this is going to repeat. Okay. Now, a little bonus question is, you could be asked this on boards or like on a test question. Is any idea what all of this is? So what is all of this right here? Like if you could, what is the volume? Like what is all of this right here? This is actually representative of your stroke volume. Okay. And the stroke volume is the amount of blood pumped per cardiac cycle. And it's about 60 to 100 mils. Okay. So this is your stroke volume. Now, how can you figure out your stroke volume from here? Well, one of the equations for stroke volume is end diastolic volume minus your end systolic volume. So you could take 120 minus 50. So your stroke volume for this particular volume loop will be 70. Another equation where you can kind of do, or even like EF, like how you can calculate ejection fraction, is now you can take your stroke volume, divide it by your end diastolic volume, and then multiply that by 100. Okay, and that's also, so that's how you can get stroke volume. EDV minus ESV is your stroke volume. Then to get your EF, you can take that stroke volume divided by your EDV and then multiply by 100. And then you've got your EF. Okay, side note there. I'm gonna go through this one more time to get it all in your brains, and then we're gonna do Wiggers, then we're gonna be done. Okay. So remember, mitral valve opens, we have filling, right? Really rapid filling. We're gonna get that atrial kick. That diastasis is when it kind of decreases that ventricular filling. Mitral valve is going to close. This is that period of isovolumetric contraction. Okay, this is actually when you have your first heart sound. All that pressure is increasing until the AV valve opens. We get that ejection because remember right here, our LV pressure is going to be greater than our aorta. It's going to pop. Finally, the AV is going to open. We're going to have injection. That's going to be also like your systolic blood pressure is measured at the very like peak of this. Okay. And then the aortic valve is going to close. We're going to be in isovolumetric relaxation. Okay. And this is actually going to be where your second heart sound is. Okay. And then we repeat. Easy peasy. I want you to draw this out for me. It's also like, I'm no artist, so it's really hard to get this all to scale. So I want you to have like the Wiggers diagram with you so you can actually see everything like to scale how it is. But now I want you to think of it like now we're going to make our cake. So those last few things that you have on your paper are all the ingredients for your cake. Okay. So we have all the ingredients. Now we are going to put together the celebrity fancy wedding cake. And we're always going to go back to, what do we know? What do you know? The very bottom, you're going to have your EKG here, right? And you guys know this. I want you guys to think of this like this is like your time. Like this is the timer of everything. Okay. So you can always look down here, what is happening down here, and trace it up. It's going to help you put everything together. Okay. So you have your PQRST here. We know P is your basically atrial systole. Okay. Then you have your QRS, which is systole. That's our contraction. And then at T, we have our ventricular repolarization. So you already know that, right? You already know like a huge part of this curve. You guys know this. So this is like the timer setting the pace for what is happening up here. Because if we have the timer, we have the electricity, right? We have like the heartbeat, through the SA node setting our timer. Now we can figure out what's going on with the volume and the pressures that are happening. All right. So let's get down and dirty. So we only have 3 lines on it. There's one. So now we just gotta, or 4. So then we gotta do these 4 up here. So there's one volume line. So you have one line that is talking about ventricular volume. That's it. And all this is changes in ventricular volume in regards to the timing of the cycle for the EKG. And we just talked about all of this. We literally already just did this. We know the flow of things. We did our pressure volume move. We just did this. So let's just look at it again from this waveform point of view. Okay. So if you look here, up here at the top, this is our isovolumetric contraction. Okay. And right here is where your AV valve is opening. And when that AV valve opens, right, what happens? Everything dumps, because we're just talking about ventricular volume. This is ventricular volume in regards to our EKG, okay? So isovolumetric contraction that we saw in the pressure volume, atrial valve opens, now we have this big dip here. Why? Because we're shooting out everything from our LV, and this is ventricular volume, right? So now we have this complete drop in our ventricular volume. And then when we get down to the bottom here, okay, go back to our curve here. This is where the mitral valve is going to open. Okay, so atrial valve is open, dump, 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 dump. It closes, mitral valve opens, and then we repeat it like all over again, right? Then we're going to fill up our ventricles. Okay, you're going to have like the isovolumetric contraction again. The AV valve is going to open, and then this is going to dip down as you eject that. Okay, that's it. This is just looking at ventricular volume. Contraction, AV valve opens, lose all the volume. Mitral valve is going to open up here. We're going to fill up the ventricle, or we're going to do the whole thing all over again. You can just add evidence by your pressure volume. Okay. And then if you're looking at it, obviously I'm going to pull up mine too, just for my, I just want to have this pulled up. Yeah, so you can see like right where it's kind of hard here, but this, yeah, I kind of drew a line here. This contraction is going to kind of correspond with your PQRS, or your QRS, sorry, your QRS. Okay. Okay. All right. So that's like 2 things done, right? Almost done, guys. Blow your mind here. Okay. Now we're in pressure. So this is it for volume. This is ventricular volume. We got it. Makes sense. Great. So now we're going to look at pressure. And the first thing I want to touch on is this ventricular pressure. So just look at this blue line. Focus on just the blue line here. Ventricular pressure. That's all we're looking at. So obviously here we're going up. So now we have this big spike in ventricular pressure. Guess what's happening right here? AV valve is open, right? Ventricular pressure is going up because what did we say is happening? The LV pressure is greater than the aorta pressure at that point. So then pressure goes up. AV valve is going to open. Now this is like that isovolumetric contraction here. Now we have the ejection here. So ejection of that. Then right here is the AV valve is going to close. And I know you can't really see that here. It's kind of buried. But just know that's like that drop here, AV valve is going to close, and this one's obviously going to open, right? But here, pressure up, 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 opens, ejects. Now the AV valve is going to close, right? This is when your aortic pressure is greater than your LV pressure. Then we're going to drop down here, and then guess what's going to happen here? You can line it up on your paper. The mitral valve is going to open. And we are going to repeat that cycle over here, right? AV valve is going to open, ejection, AV valve is going to close, and then here your mitral valve is opening. Because remember, we're just focusing on the left atrium aorta, right? We're just focusing on that. We're focusing on that final piece. This is what this is looking at. Okay. Okay. So that's done, right? We got ventricular volume down. And then once again, trace this up. You can see AV valve. You can see so now you know what's happening because we broke that all down. Now, when this is happening, you know exactly what's going on because we just even looked at it with your pressure volume. Okay. Almost done, guys. So then which one do I want to talk about next? Oh, so now back to what we do know, right? This red line here, guys, all that is your arterial line. That's it. The red line is your arterial line. So what's happening in your arterial line here? Same thing right here. AV valve opens, right? And then you're going to have that systolic, right? You're going to have that ejection, which is going to be that hump. And then you have your dicrotic notch of your A line. The AV valve is closing, and then you're going to have this diastolic. And back to the pressure volume loop, mitral valve opens, right? We're in diastole. So now we're in diastole. Okay. So the red line is just your A line tracing. That's it. It's your arterial. Opening of the AV valve, ejection, AV valve is going to close, and we're going to have that run off. Start this thing all over again. That should line up perfectly with everything on your diagram. And last but not least is your CVP line, right? So that's going to be, so now again, what do you know? You know your CVP, that is going to be your atrial pressure. So your A line, so A line is the aortic pressure line, okay? Same thing, A line, aortic pressure, same thing, okay? And now we have our atrial pressure line, which is literally just your CVP. That's it, okay? So CVP, you can look at this corresponding here. So this is going to line up with your P wave. So your A wave and your CVP is your atrial systole, which is your P wave here, okay? Then your C is going to be on P here. Your C wave is going to be your QRS, okay? This is when the tricuspid valve closes. Then you have the X descent, okay? The X descent is when your atria is relaxing. So we have atrial relaxing here. Then you have your V, which is atrial filling. And then Y, which is atrial empty. Fill, and then it empties. So AC, V, and then you have your X and Y descent. I'll go through that one more time. So your A wave is your P, it's atrial systole. Your C wave is the QRS complex here. You have your X descent, which is the atria are now relaxing. So they're relaxing up to the V wave where they can start to fill. So relax, to fill, and then they empty out. That's all the heart is doing, right? Is relax, filling, emptying out. Okay. And that's it, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. But now you can do Wiggers diagram. Literally just write out your CVP, your A line, your PQRST, your EKG line, and then you can fill in like anything else you don't know. Okay. Because it's all, you guys already know all this stuff, just putting it together, layering it up, making the cake, and that's it. All right, guys, happy anesthesiaing.